Casey, with this news today from DeMarco Murray, does he want to be here? Does he not want to be here? Is he happy here? Do the Eagles want to get rid of him? Bygones there. We haven't really talked a lot about his style of running. Does it fit in a Doug Peterson, which would essentially be an Andy Reid, West Coast style of offense?
I think when it comes to running backs, so people talk about people who can, they can do zone plays, they can do gap plays, different types of things that running backs can run. All teams do varying manners of different types of running plays. Even if you've got a zone blocking team, they're still going to have gap plays. They're still going to have draws. They're still going to have, different things that are not zone running schemes. So said is good enough. He has enough speed and burst and does a good enough job when you give him good blocking. He does pretty well, my good blocking arch per metric, that you could make any system work for him, but is he a perfect fit for the system? No.
Well, he wasn't a great fit for Chip Kelly's system, that was for sure. And the only thing I would say is, I look at Andy Reid, he had Brian Westbrook, he had LaShawn McCoy out in Kansas City, Jamal Charles, Charchandrick West. None of those guys seem like their style is similar to what DeMarco Murray brings to the table.
No, you want him to be ideally you'd like him to be in a power offense. You'd like him to be that sort of back. But, if Peterson wants to lean on the running game as much as they did in Kansas City, and maybe he does and maybe he doesn't. Kansas City had to do that pretty much from a personnel perspective. But if he wants to lean on that, the thing in the NFL is that if you want to have a couple of backs carry the ball, say 350 times, 400 times between them, you're going to have some guys who can handle that kind of pounding. And Murray's a guy who his history shows when he's motivated, he can handle as many carries as anybody in the league. So, you might look at it from maybe a skill set doesn't fit from what he does best as far as running the football, but as far as from a durability perspective, I like his skill set there if he's motivated.
I want to ask you, too, briefly on Vinny Curry, who just got a monster deal this week as well. Tough to analyze him. He was a 3-4 guy or a 4-3 guy who was playing in the 3-4, so we don't know a lot about him. He has suggested that he actually came out and said yesterday if they played 3-4, he wouldn't have re-signed here. How do you analyze what he brings to the table for the amount of money he got?
Pass rush. When you look at his a couple years ago, he did very well in a metric ESPN has called disrupted dropbacks. It's the number of times a defensive player, it's a percentage of time that they knock down a pass, they do something to disrupt the dropback, to get a sack, something of that nature. It's the times that they do that. He ranked very well in that category. And really, when it comes to pass rushing, pass rushing is one of those things. We're just talking about running backs and talent and how you can adjust the system to what they can do and what they can't do. When it comes to the player has that ability or they don't, you really can't. You can't coach it up too much. Either you can get after pass or you can't. In what we've seen on tape from Curry so far, he has that ability. If you put him in a system that'll highlight that ability, I think he can be a double-digit sack guy. So if you think that's the case skill-wise, yeah, pay him some big money. So you like the deal? Oh, yeah, I like the deal, definitely, absolutely.
Casey Joyner here. A lot of NFL stuff to get to. The Super Bowl we talked a little bit about on Monday. What I want to ask you to start things off here is, this is a number one defense against a number one offense. How come that's not being talked about more?
Because Cam Newton's a really polarizing figure, and you figure if you talk Cam Newton, you're going to get a lot of attention. It's kind of what I don't get. I wrote about it for ESPN's Insider section. Is that Carolina is, if you the sports books across the country, or in Las Vegas, I should say, they're saying they've never seen a more one-sided Super Bowl in terms of betting, and one report came out that there were 90% of bets for sports books were all going towards Carolina, and you look at like 75% of the media is picking Carolina. I just don't look at this matchup and see Carolina being this prohibitive favorite. I can't understand why people think that this is just going to be a blowout in Carolina's favor.
Well, I wonder, and we kind of dabbed at this a little bit when you joined us on Monday, Casey, and Casey will be back on Monday to recap the Super Bowl, but, is it another indication that people just don't look at Carolina's offense and respect them all that much, even though they're the top offense in the league?
I think why people are leaning so heavily towards Carolina is they envision the matchup as Cam Newton versus Peyton Manning. And Peyton Manning, at the end of his career, he's not quite what he used to be, and Cam Newton in the prime of his career. And they kind of look at it as a one-on-one matchup. And yeah, if it was those two in a in a Battle of the Network Stars caliber of contest, sure, I'm picking Newton all the time. But you could take Cam Newton's numbers. If you take the 6 cream puff matchups that he faced in the last half of the season, He faced 6 teams that ranked 22nd or worse in yards per attempt allowed. You take those 6 matchups out of his metrics, and you take the other 10 regular season matchups he had, he's got above average numbers, but nothing great. You wouldn't be giving him an MVP award for what he posted against the other 10 teams. And the other 10 teams, only 2 of them were in the top 10 in total QBR, ESPN's metric of passer rating. So, yeah, it's not like he faced a ton of top defenses, and yet he didn't put up these fantastic numbers, and Denver's not a cream puff defense. So, I think that the difference between him and Manning is not nearly as gargantuan as it might look on paper.
All right, Casey Joyner's with us. A lot of great things here leading into this Super Bowl. I think this matchup, as they're getting closer to it, is getting more and more intriguing. And one of the things with Carolina, Ted and Corey Brown, what kind of role do you see those guys? Because, again, you look at Carolina, those 2 guys' names don't roll off your tongue, but will they be important figures in the game on Sunday?
Carolina is going to have to target Bradley Rowe because really – Chris Harris is still a top corner, is one of the top corners, even though he's hurt. I imagine he's going to be in better shape than he was in the conference championship game. So they may go after Harris, but more than likely they go after Roby. And one of those guys, whoever they can get lined up, whether, because all the receivers, frankly, are, I don't want to say cut from the same cloth, but from a talent perspective, they're all pretty much at about the same level. So whoever they can get matched up against Roby is who they're going to go deep on, because if Carolina doesn't get vertical passing going in this game, that's the big thing for their offense. They can run the ball fairly well, although Denver can run the ball just as well, but Denver's got a really good run defense, and they're going to have to loosen it up somehow. So they're going to have to beat these corners, because I think if Carolina does not get their vertical game going, if they don't get passes downfield, I don't think there's a way they can win this game.
What about Olsen? What's his role against this Denver defense, which is number 1 in the league? Where do you see Olsen? Because Gronk had a good game. Not great, but, I mean, when they needed him, he was there. I'm not saying Olsen's Gronk, but he's in that he's up there.
Yeah, he's up there. And, remember Denver's safeties are both banged up. And they say, okay, they're limited in practice. They say, okay, they're going to be good to go. But if I'm Carolina, I'm testing that early on and saying, okay, I want to see are your safeties, are they really in good shape? Because if they're not in good shape, or if they are a little slowed up, I want to throw Olsen the ball double-digit times in this game. I want to send him 10 passes. Maybe just dink and dunks, and maybe some vertical passes down the seam, but I want to threaten those safeties and make those guys think you're going to have to cover some things deep, because if they're physically limited because of the injuries, and they have to think about being beaten deep by Olsen, who, like you said, is one of the top tight ends of the league, I think that's something that could keep that extra player out of the box and free things up in Carolina's running game, and I think it could be a domino effect.
All right, what about the running game for Carolina, where, big factor was Jonathan Stewart. He's had the ankle. He's listed as questionable. He didn't play at the end of the year, but obviously at the end of the regular season. But he's a big part of their offense. We should see him play, obviously. But is he going to be maybe the guy they're going to have to lean on against this Denver defense?
Yeah, I think people keep talking about the Cam Newton matchup and how stopping him is the key to beating the Panthers. And, of course, that's a pretty significant segment of stopping them. But Carolina's rushing attack, they had 2,000 yards on the ground, 2,071 rushing yards. That's or unplanned rushing plays, I should say. They had 2,071 rushing yards. That's really good. That doesn't include Newton's scramble. And they rank well in every metric you can look at: yards per rush, yards before first defensive contact, yards after first defensive contact, metric I have called good blocking yards per attempt. They do well in all those categories. Thing is that Denver's defense ranks really well in all those categories as well. Now, so does Carolina's rush defense. Carolina was they allowed nearly an equivalent number of rushing yards. They're both in the top 5 in the league in that category. But that's going to be where things. I think that the game is going to be decided is, which one of these run defenses can stop one of these rush offenses, because if they both play well, then you're going to be looking at a 17-13 game that probably leans in Denver's favor. But if one of those teams can get their running game going, I think it opens up everything else. And
last week, when they practiced on Friday, Stewart did not practice, neither did Jared Allen and Thomas Davis. What about Thomas Davis? He's practicing fully this week. He was held out of practice last week, but, this is a guy, who had surgery on his broken arm. He's going to play. Do you anticipate that being a problem for Thomas Davis? Because, man, when I watched Carolina's defense against Philadelphia, watching Davis and Kuechly, that team is just so difficult to not only run on, but throw the ball into the flats.
You don't worry about his ability to get to where he needs. You're talking a one-arm guy. It's sort of like the old classic story of Jack Youngblood years ago. He played in the Super Bowl with a broken leg. It was a hairline fracture, and he played with it. he really didn't play that well in that Super Bowl. Not only got a terrible game, but he didn't dominate in that game. He didn't, he had an okay game. So
the type of offense, was it the coach? What?
If Davis has that sort of a game, if he can get to where he needs to get to, but he can't close in, I mean, it's going to be a situation where if he gets there and he can't make the tackle, he's going to be hurting the team. So I'll be interested to see, is he going to be trying to make one-arm tackles, or if he's going to get in to make make his normal tackles.
I think we're going to try Casey one more time here. I think Kuechly is so good, Casey, he won't let me ask you a question about him.
That's got to be what it is.
Yeah, and I was saying, how do you game plan for this guy? Because he seems like he's everywhere. It seems like nobody has figured out a way to stop him.
That's the thing you do try and stay away from, or you try and do influence plays and say, okay, fine, you're going to pursue that well. You're going to do the things you do that well. We want to send you some things that'll make you react one way, and we'll come back another and things. I think that's really what you have to do. And that's one thing Denver's got to be really, really patient. That's something you got to be concerned about with Peyton Manning. Earlier in the year, he had a lot of interceptions. He was making bad decisions. Of late, he's not made any bad decisions. He's not forcing passes into coverage. And will he, and what might be his last game, will he be willing to say, I'm going to play a really patient game the entire game? Because history shows he might not do that. And Kuechly's going to be looking for a situation to capitalize on that if Peyton decides, hey, I'm going to try and be the hero of the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier about the Carolina offense and how, I don't know that people – it doesn't just roll off the tongue that they're the number one offense in the league. They don't have that glamorous, view of when you look at the number one offense, much like, the greatest show on turf type team, the Brady Patriots teams. These teams that have the number one offense typically had multiple weapons going for them. But you look at Denver, and I don't know that people point right out and say Denver's the most dominant defense in the league. I think the Manning the way that he played this year might have overshadowed the fact that their defense played at an elite level.
Yeah, their defense played. This I'm going to go a little old school. This Super Bowl reminds me so much of Super Bowl 25. Remember the Giants and the Bills? The Bills won that AFC Championship game 51-3, and they came in and everybody said, this is the greatest offense in the league, and the Giants had just went into a slugfest of San Francisco, and they won, 15-13. They had a really close game. People said, there's no way the Giants can keep up, and the Giants were able to turn that game into a slugfest. In Carolina this year, they haven't had a lot of those kind of slugfest games. They've been able to put up a lot of points against pretty much everybody. And I'm wondering, because Cam Newton, there were times this year where his bad decision rate was fairly high. He was very good most games, but there were times it was fairly high when he started to get frustrated and he started to press. And I think that if the Broncos can keep this into one of those slugfest games, it might make him make some of the bad decisions to turn the game around.
Can they run the ball on Carolina?
Can Denver run the ball on Carolina?
Yeah.
I think I think they can, because you look at the defense. You look at the rush defense, and Carolina's rush defense is not anywhere near as good as Denver's. It's good, but it's nowhere near as good. So I think Denver's got a better chance of running the football. Plus, they also have the better receivers. I think Carolina's got to go vertical with their receivers. But I think if Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders, we said, hey, between them, we're going to give them 15 to 20 short pass targets. We're going to spend a lot of our running game there, and we're going to go up against the Carolina secondary that's missing two of its top three cornerbacks, and it has two guys in their secondary who weren't even on an NFL roster in November. I think they say if we get 15 to 20 passes against those guys, I think Denver's thinking that's a great matchup for us.
The pass rush from Carolina, maybe not as significant as the Denver pass rush, but they get interior push. How does that, our old buddy Evan Mathis in there, how does that fare for Denver trying to block short and star?
Yeah, that's the thing is that if you're Denver, you're thinking our passing game, a lot of it's going to have to be dink and duck. I think Manning's going to have to be Tom Brady, because if you think he's going to sit back there and be able to take the vertical chances, I think he's going to really pick and choose when he does that. They've got the good cornerback matchups, but I think it's going to be, let's do a lot of dink and dunk, and it's going to be, let's play a really smart game and be patient to be able to be willing to go 12-play drives. And that's the thing. This year, Denver's been that type of offense. A couple years ago, Peyton Manning didn't want to play that type of offense. He wanted to be hey, I'm the centerpiece of this offense. I'm going to throw 50 touchdown passes. I think this offense this year, he finally accepted this is what we are. This is the type of offense we have to play. So when you get that up the middle pass rush, it's great against vertical passes. But thinking and dunking, all pass rush gets eliminated.
All right, we're talking with Casey Joyner here, ESPN.com. All right, we got a lot of things. Let me just give me your overall biggest key in this game and then your pick, because this game is very interesting to me. Number one offense, number one defense. I don't know that that's been the biggest storyline. As you mentioned, Newton has been so big, and Manning. You have two big polarizing stories, but you do have number one offense, number one defense. You don't see that a whole heck of a lot. So give me your overall overview and your overall key to the game and your pick, Casey.
Key to the game is going to be which quarterback makes mistakes, because they both tend to be risk takers when the situations get tight. So I have a feeling that one of them is going to make some mistakes and not play well in the game. If I'm looking at the game, overall I'm seeing a lot of places where Denver's got an edge. They've got a better pass rush. They've got the passing mismatch with the talk about the cornerbacks. They've got a significant edge of rush defense. They're every bit as good in their rushing attack. I mean, there's just a lot of places where they've got an edge. So when I'm looking at pass to victory, I'm seeing more pass to a victory for Denver than I am for Carolina. So that'd be the reason I'm picking them to win the game 23-17.
23-17 Denver. Casey Joyner, ESPN NFL Insider at KC Joyner TFS on Twitter. All right, we'll be recapping it on Monday, pal. Enjoy the game.
Appreciate you too, man.